Winter 1285. Hungarian scouts ride through fresh snow along the Carpathian passes when they spot something that makes their blood run cold. Tracks. Thousands upon thousands of hoofprints in the snow, all heading west toward Hungary. After 44 years of uneasy peace, the nightmare has returned. The Mongols are coming back. In villages across the kingdom, elderly survivors who remember 1241 begin to weep. They remember the smoke, the screams, the bodies piled so high you couldn't see the ground. They remember losing neighbors, children, and entire towns erased in a single afternoon. A quarter of Hungary's population simply ceased to exist. Now their grandchildren, who've only heard the stories, are about to face the same enemy that destroyed their world. King Ladislaus IV receives the reports in his capital. 100,000 Mongol warriors are approaching from two directions, using the same invasion routes as before. His advisors panic. Some suggest fleeing immediately, just as King Béla did all those years ago. But as Ladislaus looks out over his kingdom, something is different. Where once there were wooden palisades and earthen mounds, now stone towers rise against the winter sky. Castles, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, dot the landscape like teeth ready to bite. The question hangs in the frozen air. Would it be enough? 44 years ago, Hungary was erased from the map in a single day. Now the Mongols have returned to finish what they started. This is the story of what happened in between, and why sometimes the greatest victories take a lifetime to achieve. To understand what changed, we need to go back to that terrible day. April 11th, 1241, dawn breaks over the Szajo River in eastern Hungary. King Béla IV has assembled 60,000 men, the largest army Hungary has ever fielded. They're camped near the village of Mohi, confident and almost celebratory. The night before, they'd pushed back a small Mongol force trying to cross the bridge. To them, it felt like victory. They had no idea they were already dead. While the Hungarians slept, Mongol general Subutai, perhaps the greatest military mind of the 13th century, had been working through the night. His men constructed a pontoon bridge several miles downstream, completely undetected. At dawn, the trap sprang. Batu Khan launched a frontal assault on the bridge, exactly where the Hungarians expected. But while Béla's forces rushed to defend that single point, Subutai's cavalry poured across the southern bridge and slammed into their rear. The Hungarians found themselves encircled, trapped in their own wagon circle formation, with nowhere to run. Mongol arrows fell like a metal rain. Then came something Europe had never seen before. Explosive devices launched from catapults, crude gunpowder weapons that produced deafening blasts and clouds of smoke. The psychological effect was devastating. Archbishop Ugrin died fighting on the front lines. Duke Kalaman, the king's brother, suffered wounds that would kill him days later. And King Béla? He ran. He had no choice. To stay was to die. What happened next wasn't a battle, but a massacre. 65,000 men dead in a matter of hours. The Szajo River literally ran red, and smoke blotted out the sun. But that was just the beginning. For the next 12 months, Mongol forces swept across Hungary like a plague. They were methodical, almost surgical in their destruction. 50 to 80% of settlements in the plains were razed to the ground. Bodies rotted in fields because there was no one left to bury them. By the time the Mongols finally withdrew in late 1242, Hungary had lost somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 people, roughly a quarter of its entire population. Here's what strikes me about this catastrophe. It was almost entirely preventable. Hungary had the manpower, the resources, the warning. What they didn't have were walls. The Hungarian kings had spent centuries deliberately preventing anyone from building strong fortifications because they feared powerful nobles and castles might rebel against royal authority. This policy worked brilliantly for maintaining political control, right up until the moment those politics got a quarter of the population killed. A German chronicler visiting in 1241 noted with shock that Hungary had almost no city protected by walls or strong fortresses. The Mongols exploited this ruthlessly. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into medieval strategy, make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to get into how one broken king turned this disaster into triumph. When King Béla returned to his kingdom in early 1242 after the Mongols withdrew, he stood in the ruins of Pest and saw his life's work reduced to ash. His nobles, those who survived, blamed him for the disaster. His policies, his decisions, and his failure to adequately prepare had led them into the trap at Mohi. They weren't entirely wrong. Béla could have made excuses. He could have pointed fingers. Instead, he did something remarkable. He learned. For months, Béla obsessively studied the defeat. He interviewed survivors, consulted with foreign military experts, and read everything he could about Mongol tactics. The conclusion became unavoidable. The wooden and earthen defenses that had served Hungary for generations were worse than useless against a mobile, siege-equipped force like the Mongols. Those few stone castles that existed had survived